it's kind of quiet around the country. We like quiet. It's quiet. It's too quiet.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the worst days in the history of the entire world, not just the United States. Not just the United States. Terrorism has a goal. The goal is to strip freedom from the population of the world. You can bet on it. That will be the outcome. Freedom will be redefined or disappear altogether. And we have known for many years that these kinds of things have been planned, have been in the works. We didn't know the time period that they would happen. If you read my book, this is exactly the scenario that I described. I named the city, New York. Unbelievable. It's twice now they've hit the World Trade Center buildings.
1993, in the World Trade Center bombing. That explosion left 6 people dead, more than 1,000 injured. Damages in excess of $500 million. But there is a part of the World Trade Center bombings that is severely underreported. That it was the FBI presiding over the terrorists who carried out the 1993 bombing. In fact, virtually no one would know that fact today had it not been for this man, Imad A. Salim, a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer. He was used by our government to penetrate a circle of Muslim extremists. According to extensive reporting by the New York Times, Mr. Salim secretly recorded hundreds of hours of conversations with the feds. Again, according to the Times, law enforcement officials were told the terrorists were building a bomb that was eventually used to blow up the World Trade Center. They planned to thwart the plotters by secretly substituting harmless powder for the explosives. The informer was to have helped the plotters build the bomb and supply the fake powder, but the plan was called off by an FBI supervisor. The account portrays the authorities as in a far better position than previously known to foil the February 26 bombing of New York City's tallest towers.
Somebody should have known. Somebody should have taken the precautions necessary to prevent these kinds of things from happening. We've all known, it's been discussed. People have ventured speculation that somebody could fly an airplane into the White House or into the Pentagon or into a major target somewhere here in the United States of America. So, it's not as if nobody suspected that anything like this could happen.
Never did in anybody's thought process about how to protect America did we ever think that the evildoers would fly not one, but 4 commercial aircraft into precious U.S. targets. Never.
Steve, I don't think anybody could have predicted that these people would take an airplane and slam it into the World Trade Center, take another one and slam it into the Pentagon,
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government could envision flying airplanes into buildings at such a massive scale.
But that turns out not to be true. U.S. military planners did envision and practice those very scenarios. As reported by USA Today, North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, conducted exercises with fighter jets, simulating hijacked planes flown into the World Trade Center in the 2 years before the attacks. Pentagon planners also envisioned the attack on the Pentagon 5 months before it happened. According to this April 2001 Pentagon email, Air Force officials wanted a war game, having a terrorist group hijack a commercial airline and fly it into the Pentagon.
On the morning of 9/11, the United States military is conducting war games in which fighter jets are flown out of the country, planes are crashed into buildings, and hijacked planes go in and out of radar, leaving military controllers confused regarding whether the events were real or an exercise. What a coincidence.
Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, Bill, good afternoon. I'm calling from New Jersey, watching the local news here. Earlier this morning, about 10 minutes after it happened, one of the news stations received a phone call from a person inside one of the buildings, actually calling for help to help him get out of there. He reported that the whole core inside of the building was blown out, and all the elevator shafts were blown out.
So somebody phoned from inside the building.
Yes, he was more concerned about getting help. He's not really like reporting what's going on. He said,
Yeah.
listen, I'm stuck, the doors are jammed, I can't get out, the whole core of the building is gone. All I know is that he was on the 86th floor, I believe.
Well, here's one of the strangest things. You see, it wasn't just those planes flying into those buildings. It couldn't
Right.
be. Because those planes hit almost at the top of the building. They were in the top third or 1/4 of those towers and could not have injured the structural integrity of the building on the bottom. Also, the only place that fire was occurring was at that area and above.
That's what caused me suspicion as to why the whole building would collapse.
Something blew up on the major structural buildings down at the bottom of those buildings that brought them down. You have to have charges placed upon the main structural building, main structural members of the building in order to bring something like that down. Remember, these are steel reinforced concrete buildings.
Correct.
This is strong. They're called hard targets in military jargon, and the only way to affect a hard target is with placed charges on the main structural members.
Correct. Well, I mean, recollect years back when that bomber hit the Empire State Building. All it did was take out a couple of floors. That didn't come down.
The Empire State Building and all New York City were wrapped in fog as a B-25 Mitchell bomber trying to reach a nearby airport crashed into the tallest structure in the world. 13 were killed, including the 3 in the plane.
The buildings came down, folks. I mean, collapsed upon themselves all the way to the ground. A jet plane crashing into the top quarter of those buildings can't do that. It's absolutely impossible. Somebody had to have placed charges upon the main structural members that support the buildings somewhere at the ground level in order to bring those buildings down like they fell, just like the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. That fertilizer truck parked on the street did not bring that building down.
Here's now what we are starting to learn about the succession, or what someone obviously hoped would be a succession of explosions. The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. So try to imagine 2- or 3-fold happening what we've already seen there. It is just incredible to think that there was that much heavy artillery that was somehow moved into the downtown Oklahoma City Federal Building.
2 other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger than the first.
I think he said another bomb.
Oh my God, another bomb.
We just saw, if you were watching there was a white pickup truck backing a trailer into the scene here. They're trying to move people out of the way so they can get it in. Appears to be the Oklahoma County Bomb Squad
It's their bomb disposal unit, essentially, is what it is, and it is what they would use to, if the report that we gave you just a few moments ago turns out to be correct, that they have found a second explosive device of some kind inside this building, they'll back that trailer down there, and the bomb squad folks will go in, and they will use that trailer. You see the bucket on the back there, sort of, this is how they would transport the explosive device away from this populated area to try to do something with it.
The Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the AP Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Mike, you're still with us, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and I might tell you in addition to that, in fact, what we were told at the scene a few minutes ago was that, in fact, 2 different explosive devices were found in addition to the one that went off.
So a total of 3.
A total of 3.
Now confirmed through federal authorities that a second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City. It was an explosion at 9 o'clock this morning that did that damage you're looking at right there, blowing off the entire north face of that building. Again, you're looking at the north face there. A second bomb was found on the east side of that building. A bomb squad is on the scene. That second bomb has not exploded. We don't know quite the status yet, if they've managed to defuse it, but it has been confirmed that a second bomb was found on the east side.
The report I have is that one device was deactivated. Apparently there's another device, and obviously whatever did the damage to the Murrah building was a tremendous, very sophisticated explosive device.
It was supported by major columns of steel reinforced concrete, which are hard targets. I know all about hard targets. I fought in a war. I went to booby trap school. The Navy taught me how to bring down hard targets, and they told me the only way that it could be done, and that's with shaped charges placed upon the main structural members. Airplanes flying into the top of those buildings did not bring those buildings down, and if you believe they did, you know, there's air between your ears. And there shouldn't be. There should be some brain material in there. If you don't believe me, talk to explosives experts, talk to demolition people who bring down buildings routinely, and they'll tell you exactly how hard it is to do it. It is very difficult.
We blow the basement, all the columns in the basement. Then we crack it up at the top to get it started. We go every other floor all the way down. Every explosive has a timer on it. That's why it's controlled. When the columns go, each floor goes down and impacts the one below and keeps going.
And we started running, floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
if
detonated.
they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
Van Romero, Vice President for Research at New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology. My opinion is, based on the videotapes, after the airplanes hit the World Trade Center, there were some explosive devices inside that caused the towers to collapse. The collapses were too methodical to be a chance result of airplanes colliding with the structures.
Spoke to the Chief of Safety for the New York City Fire Department. He received word of the possibility of a secondary device, that is another bomb going off. He thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building.
Another bomb was set off at the World Trade Center, and if you are just tuning in, you will see there is no more World Trade Center. Both towers have collapsed.
We presume because of the initial explosion there may have been secondary explosions as well that were detonated in the building by these terrorists.
Like a bomb went off, and another explosion came right from it, just everyone flying.
There were numerous secondary explosions taking place in that building. There were continuous explosions.
All of a sudden you just heard the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life, and got about 10 steps when I got blown across the lobby, and that's when I lost my tools, my Halligan and my axe.
How do you bring that building down? You can't. You gotta implode it. You can't even implode it. It's too high. You gotta dismantle it from the top.
Rick Sanchez has been there throughout this morning for us. Rick, tell us where you are and what the latest is.
Well, I'm in that area, if you're familiar with this area of where West Broadway and Hudson come together, right at Chambers. That would put us about a block and a half away from the site evacuated because police have found what they describe as a suspicious device, and they fear that it might be something that could lead to another explosion. Obviously, there's a real sense of caution here on the part of police. Their fear is that there may have been explosive device planted either in the building or in the adjacent area, and that's why they're being so cautious.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
You just think of the sophistication of this, in which the terrorists would have planted bombs, 2 of them, one under each tower, and then they permitted the planes to fly in first. They had to hijack them first, fly them in, hit the 2 towers, and then after the towers burned a while, blow them up from the bottom.
At that point, we heard a large boom. I looked up and just saw the building coming at us.
It was an explosion. It was way up where the fire was, and the whole building at that point bellied out in flames.
The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it's folded down on itself, and it is not there anymore.
That should be it.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
Just collapsing on itself. This is a place where thousands of people work. We have no idea what caused this. If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
This was clearly, the way the structure is collapsing, this was the result of something that was planned. It's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse in exactly the same way. How they accomplished this, we don't know.
Number 2 as he takes these pictures. Jim?
Yes, I am here, Michael.
Jim, tell us what's happening out there.
Oh my We just witnessed some kind of secondary follow-up explosion on the World Trade Center #2, the wall.
Secondary.
It looks like one of those scenes of an old building being, purposely dynamited and blown up.
Making my way to the foot of the World Trade Center, suddenly, while talking to an officer who was questioning me about my press credentials, we heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse.
They're both down now. It's just a huge cloud of smoke.
Oh my God. We gotta go.
You said it sounded like the 4th of July. You heard a big explosion before the building fell?
I saw it as it was happening, and it sounded as if you had 100 of those little black cat firecrackers and you lit them all off at once. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like the finale of the 4th of July over the East River.
That's a videotape replay.
Silverstein, we got a second tower down. Another tower collapsed. Who's involved in the secondary explosion at Tower 1K? I've got 5 patients. They need to be treated.
They won't let me go any closer. I can go in to get the people out. There's small explosion still going on.
Here is the second tower that's coming down. And this was a similar situation. This defies belief.
When you think that part of the component of news coverage around the country every year is the excitement and the fun that people get watching an old building being demolished, and they wire it very carefully for days, and it's a very careful operation in order to make sure that a building comes down safely. I think the last one we saw was when they brought down one of the old casinos in Las Vegas. I mean, this is just stunning to see these things come down.
It was very much like a controlled demolition when you look at it, because the building essentially fell almost vertically down, as if someone had deliberately set blasts to take place to cause the building to fall vertically down.
Until 9/11, I was unaware of any protected steel structure that had collapsed anywhere in the world.
The thing that pleases me is the fragmentation and the control. One to take a building and break it up into millions of pieces and put it in this basement as artfully as we do it, and it works just like clockwork. So I've got it all down to a science. It gives me goosebumps to talk about it.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Silverstein, a commercial real estate tycoon with international political connections, acquired a 99-year lease on the World Trade Center complex in the spring of 2001. Throughout the summer, he reworked the insurance policies on his new property, making sure that it was covered for acts of terrorism. Explicit in the lease agreement was Silverstein's right to rebuild the complex if it were destroyed. No plane hit Building 7. But at 5:20 p.m. on September 11th, it collapsed in a heap on the ground. Some damage to Building 7 is said to have been caused by debris from Tower 1. Compare this to the wallops sustained by World Trade Center 3, 4, 5, and 6. Positioned right below the towers, damage to the surrounding World Trade Center buildings was infinitely worse. Still, the structures held up. But somehow, rescue workers knew that Building 7 would fall.
Keep your eye on that building, it'll be coming down. Building is about to blow up. Moving back.
Rescue workers pushed people away from the scene.
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up. I'm in the building's not clear now. Sorry, is it the bomb?
A 47-story skyscraper, Building 7 folded neatly in 6.5 seconds. A textbook descent right into its footprint.
By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull building 6.
Just in the last few seconds, another building, building number 7, one of the buildings in support of the World Trade Center towers, has collapsed.
World Trade 7, functioning as the command center for the complex, housed giant diesel backup and oxygen systems, the mayor's protected emergency bunker, and offices for the CIA, Secret Service, Department of Defense, and Securities and Exchange Commission. Its other tenants were insurance companies, brokerages, and banks. Why Building 7? Let's ask the question again. As the WTC Command Center, was it the hub for the 9/11 plan? Also, in 6.5 seconds, lost forever were thousands of SEC case files on corporate fraud, including those relating to the notorious activities of giants WorldCom and Enron. A few indictments for stock fraud, but what of the $70 billion California electricity swindle? It disappeared.
This is Building 7 in the World Trade Center area is collapsing. Now, whether we don't even know whether this was something that was engineered for safety reasons or it just happened as a consequence of the two collisions this morning.
This was known as Building 7 of the World Trade Center, and that is fresh video you're looking at of that coming down.
Now, again, they were able to get everybody out of that building before it collapsed. So I don't know whether it was accomplished by demolition experts or whether it just happened as a consequence of what occurred earlier today.
Truth Action points to World Trade Center building number 7 that was behind the Twin Towers and how it went down that day.
It looks like a typical controlled demolition. It came down to the ground in 6.6 seconds, which is basically free fall speed, which is basically means there's no resistance.
It's amazing. Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
World Trade Center 7 was brought down on September 11th at 5:20 in the evening. the leaseholder of the World Trade Center complex, Larry Silverstein, gave a public interview on PBS in 2002, and he said that they pulled that building, which is a demolition term for intentionally bringing down a building. This man made over $5 billion from those buildings' destruction, and I want to know if there was ever a formal investigation into Larry Silverstein, the leaseholder of the World Trade Center complex, and his ties to this entire event.
I don't believe there's been a formal investigation. I haven't heard that. I don't know that. I do know that that wall, I remember, was in danger, and I think that they made a decision based on the danger that it had of destroying other things, that they did it in a controlled fashion.
They're wired very carefully for days, and it's a very careful operation in order to make sure that the building comes down safe.
The designers of the Trade Center tried to anticipate every possible disaster. The towers were the first skyscrapers ever explicitly built to survive the impact of a plane.
We had designed the project for the impact of our largest airplane of its time, the Boeing 707. That is to take this jet airplane, run it into the building, destroy a lot of structure, and still have it stand up. We designed the buildings to take the impact of the Boeing 707 hitting the building at any location.
The building was designed to have a fully loaded 707 crash into it. That was the largest plane at the time. I believe that the building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door, this intense grid, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing that screen netting. It really does nothing to the screen netting.
An aircraft crashing into the World Trade Center would probably not do anything to the major building. It could affect localized structural elements, could knock out a column, and there could be some damage. But as far as a plane knocking a building over of that type, that would not happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, all I can tell you is this is a major attack upon the United States of America, but even more than that, it's a major attack upon freedom worldwide, and you're going to see some serious repercussions happen from all of the terrible things that have occurred this morning. It's one of the worst days in human history. I don't believe that they're going to get Osama bin Laden. The CIA created Osama bin Laden, in case you weren't aware of that. And the Bush family has been doing business with the bin Laden family for many years. And I'm not making that up, that's a fact. They have intertwining investments in their business dealings.
In 1979, the CIA initiated a massive program of covert military aid to indigenous Islamic tribes in Afghanistan and Islamic volunteers from other nations who were in opposition to the Russian military invasion of that country. The Russians had formed a coalition with several Afghani tribes from the north of that country, which are referred to as the Northern Alliance. The tribes supported by the CIA were called the Mujahideen by the Western press. Ronald Reagan in 1986 euphemistically referred to the Mujahideen as the freedom fighters of Central Asia. Elements within the Mujahideen later branched off to become Al-Qaeda, again with full CIA support and funding. The leader of Al-Qaeda is a Saudi Arabian who had been educated in Europe, whose name is Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden's father was Sheikh Mohammed bin Laden, who founded and built Bin Laden Brothers Construction Company. Later, this company was renamed the Saudi Bin Laden Group. It should also be noted that from the early 1980s, Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset whose Western cover name was Tim Osman. The bin Laden family is one of the wealthiest in Saudi Arabia and has been instrumental in building dozens of American military bases in the Middle East. The bin Laden family is closely connected with the ruling sheiks of Saudi Arabia and has strong political and personal connections around the world. The bin Laden family and the Bush families have been friends and business partners for many years. In 1977, George Bush Jr. started Arbusto Energy Company in Midland, Texas. One of his first and major investors was Salim bin Laden, who at that time had become the president of the Saudi bin Laden Group. Salim happened to be the older brother of Osama bin Laden.
The Project for a New American Century, a neoconservative think tank whose members include Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, and Jeb Bush, releases their report entitled Rebuilding America's Defenses. The report calls for a massive overhaul of the United States military and encourages fighting and winning multiple theater wars. They declare that the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. 17 of the project's participants would later take positions in the next White House administration.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled.
All of you who thought that George Bush was going to save this country, boy, were you mistaken. Gosh.
And now we're being bombarded with messages that Osama bin Laden is planning to attack the United States of America and Israel. And I'm telling you, be prepared for a major attack. But it won't be Osama bin Laden. It will be those behind the New World Order who once again want to take the guns and the freedom away from the American people, because we're the only ones left in the world who can oppose the destruction of freedom in the world and the implementation of a one-world totalitarian socialist government, and that is the goal. Can you believe what you have been seeing on CNN today, ladies and gentlemen? Can you believe it? Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. Some doofus jerk-off reporter with a camera crew waltzes right into his hideout and interviews him. And you know what his budget is? Zip, zilch, nothing. Now, that tells us two things. Either everyone in the intelligence community and all of the intelligence agencies of the United States government are blithering idiots and incompetent fools, including the entire apparatus of the FBI and all of their personnel, or they're lying to us. They're not looking for him at all. And the second is the truth. You see, the CIA created Osama bin Laden. They recruited him. They trained him. They found his leadership. They brought them all together. They showed them how to fight the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, and when that was over, they still continued to fund him and train him, and they're now using him to help bring about world government by making him the big boogeyman, because they can't use Saddam Hussein anymore. Did you ever hear of Osama bin Laden before you heard of Saddam Hussein? When did you start hearing of Osama bin Laden? It was after Saddam Hussein and Iraq were supposedly neutralized in the Gulf War, because they needed a new boogeyman. A reporter from CNN and his little camera crew got into Osama bin Laden's secret hideout and conducted an interview. If you don't believe me, tune into CNN. They're probably running it right now as I'm speaking. And if you believe it, you are one of the stupidest jerks that ever lived on the face of this earth. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. Another social engineering project to change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people of the world, and especially the United States, to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government. So why do all these fools believe this charade? That a CNN reporter and his little camera crew can do what all the money and all the assets and all the eavesdropping and all the intelligence and all the satellites and all the undercover operatives in the world can never do. It's because they're not trying. They don't want to. Osama bin Laden is their creation, and he is serving them well. When in hell are all you people going to wake up? Hitler could not have ever come to power, absolute power in Germany, without the Reichstag fire.
February 27th, 1933. At 9:27 p.m., a massive fire erupts inside the Reichstag, Germany's House of Parliament. Marinus van der Lubbe, a 24-year-old half-blind Dutch communist, is found half-naked behind the building and arrested on sight. After an interrogation and trial, Marinus is beheaded 3 days before his 25th birthday. Historians argue that Gestapo police entered the Reichstag through an underground tunnel and soaked the building with chemicals and gasoline, with Marinus van der Lubbe arriving later to start the fire with his shirt. Later that evening, Adolf Hitler and Hermann Göring meet in front of the flaming debris to round up a list of communists and execute them that same night. The next day, Hitler passed the Reichstag fire decree, which suspended most civil liberties and banned publications considered unfriendly to the Nazi cause. Hitler then takes Nazi control of the German parliament, passes the Enabling Acts, and begins his invasion of neighboring countries.
Hitler was a socialist. He understood socialism. He understood social engineering. He knew how to get the support of the German people, and he did it by burning down the Reichstag. The Reichstag was, well, in our country, it would be the Capitol building that contains the Senate and the House of Representatives. So if somebody were to go and burn down the Capitol building today, they would use that as an excuse, as Hitler did, to round up all of the enemies of the New World Order, which would be me and most of you listening, and throw us into prison or execute us, declare martial law, and come to absolute and total power in this country. I wonder what Osama bin Laden's targets are supposed to be. And if they don't, if this doesn't materialize in the next 2 or 3 weeks, it will eventually materialize because they haven't succeeded in getting the guns out of the hands of the American people, nor have they succeeded in taking our freedoms away. In fact, there's been a great awakening in this country and a big backlash against these Marxist, communist, puke-faced, lying, subversive, Nazi, jackbooted Gestapo thugs that is gaining momentum. And so I can tell you with a certainty, they must do something terrible in order to stop this backlash and regain the sympathy of the mass herds of sheeple out there. And I'm telling you, one of the things that will give us the moral high ground and will begin civil war is the day that they begin declaring martial law across this country, taking guns out of the hands of the American people and rounding up American patriots. The war will start on that day. On that day. And there will be a war in this country, a civil war to restore, not a revolution, but a civil war to restore constitutional Republican government. Now, at the same time that that's going on, communist and Marxist underground forces will begin, or try to begin, a revolution in order to institute a Marxist, socialist, or communist government as a result of the Civil War. So we, patriots, will be fighting on two fronts. On two fronts. And you'd better understand which side you're going to be on. Restoration, revolution, or tyranny. I'll be fighting with the forces of restoration, and so should you better be. And supposedly we're not the only nation searching for Osama bin Laden, so the vast economic resources, the vast technological resources, the vast personnel resources, the vast networks and intricate web spun over all these years by the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA can't find Osama bin Laden, but CNN can? Bullshit. So many people in this country have their heads so far up their ass, I doubt very seriously if they will manage to extricate it before they suffocate. What a shame. What a crying shame.
Apache County Sheriff's deputy is in the hospital after being shot in the head by a so-called militia member.
Now what we know is that that militia member is dead.
This is what we know so far. Sheriff's deputies, we understand, were trying to serve some type of arrest warrant on a man by the name of William Cooper. He's also known as Bill Cooper. Sheriff's deputies apparently disguised themselves as a bunch of rowdy teenagers in the back of a pickup truck in hopes of luring Cooper out, and it apparently worked. However, when Cooper realized what was happening, he reportedly pulled a gun. During the gunfight, Cooper himself was shot and he was killed.
It's an old cemetery, basically a very crude mapping system because of the age of the graves. And I look out here, and it's the exact view that Bill loved in the mornings, afternoons, whenever, but afternoons his favorite. It's the same view we had from his back porch where we would barbecue and sit and listen to shortwave radio at night and watch the sunset and the snow, and just beautiful. He loved it. He talked about it on the radio often. So I'm standing here, I'm looking at this, and it's amazing. I'm still getting this chill feeling. And I look over like this, and there's Bill's house, perfectly in line. And this is essentially the exact same elevation and line of his back porch where he always sat and enjoyed the view of this valley, the round valley here. And I said, I want this one no matter what. The gentleman, Tom, he circled the area with cones and parked a vehicle here and notified the city crews that no one wanted to get this spot because it was for Bill, and that's pretty much how it happened. Probably due to the light and circumstances, the research he was involved in and what he was exposing, I have no doubt he is in a much better place on having to mess with this anymore.